India's history has been shaped by many powerful empires, but the British Empire's colonization of India left one of the most significant marks. But what if the British had never invaded India? How would this vast, diverse land have evolved on its own? In this video, we'll explore an alternate history of India, one where British colonization never happened, and dive into the unique aspects that aren't often mentioned. What would India's economy, society, and politics look like today if it had developed without British rule? If the British had never set foot in India, one of the biggest questions is how the country's various regions, religions, and ethnic groups would have coexisted and evolved. India, even before colonization, was a land of immense diversity, home to Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, Christians, and others. Without British interference, India might not have developed as a unified nation-state, but rather as a collection of powerful regional kingdoms, each with its own distinct identity. The Mughal Empire, which controlled much of northern India before the British arrived, was already in decline by the 18th century. In the absence of the British, regional powers like the Marathas, the Sikhs, the Mysore Kingdom, and the Rajput states might have risen to prominence. These kingdoms may have either engaged in alliances or conflicts to expand their influence. Instead of a single, unified India, we might have seen the subcontinent divided into several smaller, independent states, each vying for dominance. One possible conflict that could have emerged without British intervention is religious tensions between Hindus and Muslims. While India has always been a land of religious pluralism, conflicts between different religious communities existed before the British and would have continued to some extent. However, the British policy of divide and rule exacerbated these tensions. Without their interference, it's possible that local rulers would have found ways to manage religious diversity more organically, though internal conflicts over religion, land, and power would still have been a challenge. In terms of language, one of the most interesting outcomes of British colonization was the establishment of English as India's lingua franca. In an alternate history where the British never arrived, the question arises, what would India's main language be? Hindi, spoken by a large portion of the population, might have naturally evolved as a common language for communication, particularly in northern and central India. However, in the southern regions, languages like Tamil, Telugu, and Kannada would have likely remained dominant. It's possible that India would have developed a more decentralized linguistic identity, with regional languages maintaining their importance in everyday life and administration. Sanskrit, historically the language of scholars and elites, might have played a greater role in bridging linguistic gaps across the subcontinent, though it's unlikely to have become a common spoken language. The diversity of languages could have remained strong, perhaps with more emphasis on multilingualism across different regions. Economically, India was one of the richest regions in the world before British colonization, thanks to its thriving agriculture, textiles, and trade. Without British exploitation of resources and industries, India's economy might have continued to grow, making it a leading player in global trade. The textile industry, particularly in places like Bengal, was already world-renowned. Without the British dismantling of local industries, India could have become an even more significant center for manufacturing, trade, and innovation. However, it's important to remember that India's political landscape before the British was highly fragmented. Without colonization, the region might not have developed the large-scale infrastructure that the British built, like railways and a centralized legal system, which, despite being exploitative, did help unify the region. In this alternate history, India's economic growth might have been slower, as different regions pursued their own trade policies and development strategies. On the other hand, regional economies could have thrived independently, with places like Gujarat and Bengal becoming major trade hubs in their own right. One potential benefit of avoiding British rule is that India's traditional knowledge systems, especially in science, mathematics, and medicine, could have continued to flourish. The ancient universities of Nalanda and Takshashila were once centers of learning that attracted scholars from all over the world. Without the British focus on Western education, India's indigenous education system could have evolved further, blending ancient knowledge with modern innovations. This might have created a uniquely Indian approach to science and technology, deeply rooted in its philosophical and intellectual traditions. However, internal conflicts would still have been a significant challenge. The Marathas, Mughals, Rajputs, and other regional powers were often in conflict, and without a unifying force, these rivalries could have led to prolonged periods of instability. In the absence of colonization, India might have been less centralized, with regional rulers exercising greater autonomy, leading to a more fragmented political landscape. Another overlooked aspect of British colonization was their role in introducing Western political concepts, such as democracy and modern governance structures. Without British rule, India's political system might have taken a different path. Traditional monarchies and regional governance systems could have persisted longer, though it's possible that reform movements, similar to those in Europe, could have emerged from within the subcontinent over time. These movements could have pushed for more representative governance, though the timeline and structure would have been different. What about India's relations with the rest of the world? Without the British Empire, India's global connections might have evolved differently. Trade with neighboring regions like Persia, Southeast Asia, and Africa would have remained strong, but India's influence in Europe and the Americas might have been less pronounced. However, as a wealthy and powerful region, India could have still attracted attention from European powers, leading to trade agreements or alliances that shaped global geopolitics. In conclusion, an India without British colonization would be vastly different from the one we know today. It would likely have remained a collection of powerful regional kingdoms, each with its own language, culture, and religion. Economically, India might have thrived, but without the centralized infrastructure introduced by the British, growth might have been slower. However, the absence of British exploitation could have allowed India to retain its wealth and cultural heritage, creating a uniquely Indian path to modernization. The question remains, would this alternate history have been more peaceful and prosperous, or would India have faced even more internal challenges? If you found this exploration into an alternate history of India intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos about history, geopolitics, and alternate realities. Let us know in the comments, how do you think India would have developed without British rule? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.